Hello, YouTube. This is Dr. Dave Maslock. I'm talking about reciprocity.com, the sharing economy proofreading platform that I'm trying to build. The E is spelled with a 3. So in this video, I want to talk about using your own personal networks to find your own opportunities for creating your own small business, because I think this is very, very important, and it's something that's overlooked a lot. So what I'm going to get into is, first of all, why it's important to use your own personal networks. And then I'm going to talk about some sort of topics that we talk about in network theory in the business schools or within business schools. So I'm a professor of innovation at a large state institution. And we talk about this kind of stuff. We kind of nerd out. So first of all, why is it so important to look at your own personal networks for creating your own small business? So a lot of people think that when you create a small business, you have to have this amazing idea that is immediately, it's Walmart right from the get-go, right? Some big, large, grand thing that it is so big, and it's such a big thing that nobody else can sort of pursue it. Or you're, for example, Ferrari, and you've created this wonderful thing that everybody is enamored with. And this kind of creates this sort of mentality or this belief that you can't do something that is so wonderful at the beginning, and then you kind of you don't do whatever you wanted to do, right? So you're thinking about this idea and you're like, I can't do that. It's too hard. It's too big. It's just, there's nothing, I can never get there. But here's the thing. Most businesses are not started like that. Most businesses start very tiny. They are a small business and there's nothing to them. And the way they start, get a load of this, the way they start, it's just with somebody following their own ideas, following their own interests, and they just kind of putter along with it. They just continue to putter along. Sometimes it gets accelerated. And the way that you accelerate it is you get some sort of financing, right? You get extra resources thrown to you. And the way that you get extra resources thrown to you, and that is coming from maybe from a bank, which is unlikely with a startup. You're probably not going to get that unless you're in a very conservative sort of proven field, like you're a veterinarian or a doctor or something like that, and you're creating your own clinic. That's really proven. But if you're doing something that's unique and different, it's really hard to get sort of bank financing. So the way that you actually get some sort of financing and get some extra resources is you just keep puttering with something, and you just keep throwing that idea out there. That's how a lot of things get started, and probably the majority of things get started is somebody just puttering around with something. They're kind of messing around. Maybe they have this, maybe they really love ham radio, for example, and they're like, this is really cool, and they start sharing their ideas, and they start exploring, and then pretty soon they develop into, they find something that is unique and different, and people start asking them for advice, and then after a while they get kind of overwhelmed with this advice, and then you can start charging for that advice, and it just becomes, maybe you create a service that is directed towards ham radio. And I'm going to give you an example of one of the largest medical device companies that exists in the world. I know this industry because this is the industry that I study. It's Medtronic. If any of you have, a lot of people have pacemakers, for example. Probably the majority of the pacemakers that are out there, there's only a few competitors in that space. The majority of the pacemakers that are out there are developed by Medtronic. In fact, they were the first ones to actually develop a pacemaker. You want to know how it was started? It was started by this dude, Earl Bachman, who just was puttering around at a hospital. He was a electrical person. He was fixing things for a hospital in Minnesota, and one day they actually had a catastrophe that happened in the hospital, and there was a lot of a ward of babies back in the 50s. There was what's called blue babies, and these were babies that were born and they didn't get enough oxygen, so they looked blue when they were born. And the way that they helped them is they gave them external defibrillators. So external defibrillator, you just kind of had a couple of wires that were hooked up and going through. And I know I'm not exactly electricians, so this is probably going to be totally people that are experts in this area. They're going to be like, what the heck is this guy talking about? But anyways, they had a couple of wires hooked up externally to babies to make sure that they were getting enough oxygen to these blue babies. And then eventually what happened is there was a power outage. There was a power outage one night, and a couple of babies were harmed throughout this process. And when there was this power outage, and the next day, one of the physicians contacted Earl Bachman and said, can you do something where we can prevent this from happening? This is an atrocity, right? This was awful at the time. So what Earl Bachman did, he went home. The very next day he came back, and they were testing out the first defibrillator. Implantable cardio defibrillator. It wasn't implanted at the time, but it was a defibrillator that was hooked up to a battery. And it was essentially just a car battery that they hooked up to, and they were using it, and that was off to the races. And that's how the first, that was how Medtronic, which is a large, huge company, actually got started. Is they just were messing around with something in their garage, and this puttering around actually created a large multinational company that has arms all over the place. And that's how businesses typically get started. And we don't want to start with something big. We want to start with something small and just putter around with that thing and just keep telling people, oh, I'm kind of interested in this, it's kind of interesting. And then when opportunities come to you, you kind of have to grab on them. And that's why your network, your personal network, is so incredibly important. And you're just kind of puttering around with things. That's typically how things happen. But your network contains opportunities and knowledge that you couldn't possess in of yourself, right? So if you're kind of just this sole person doing your thing, well, you're totally isolated and you're not going to actually get anywhere. But if you have a network and you're just kind of, your network is just friends, family, maybe some acquaintances that you met along the way. It's just kind of just normal life people. And in this normal life people, in this network, there is what's called weak ties and strong ties. Weak ties are kind of acquaintances. So this is people that you kind of know, but not really know. And sometimes you bump into them and you say, hey, I'm working on this cool thing. It's interesting. This is what I'm doing. And they might say, well, great. I have this opportunity over here that might fit in that area. And that's how you actually get opportunities to keep growing your company. But then there is also the strong ties. These strong ties help you sort of keep persisting. They give you resources. They are, family and friends that know you very, very well. You can rely on them for immediate knowledge as well as resources. Sometimes you need, maybe you need some extra money to sort of develop something. Family and friends are the place to start. You probably don't want to ask them right away. That's terrible. But maybe once you keep working at something, it actually develops into something that's interesting. People might be interested in it, and then you could ask them for some extra resources, whatever it is. Maybe it's not financing, but something else. And that's typically how things develop. And that's why it's so important to start off small and continuously develop your network. So here's the trick. If you think about it, eventually your network is going to stagnate and you're going to get static. It's going to become static. It's not going to change very much. And that's if you are not continuously growing and sort of doing your thing and pursuing what you wanted to, because you're just like, I've had enough. What you have to continuously do is learn and continuously develop this network. And that's how you actually develop a network, is you just continuously learn. So go to, for example, some of you might be interested in going to graduate school. Hey, you can look up my school and my colleagues. They're interesting folks. You can find out where you can actually develop your network by, going to graduate school, for example, or undergraduate school, and you start developing new people because you're learning and you're developing interests. That's why it's so important to go to a pretty good school where you can develop your network. It's one of the advantages of going to an Ivy League school, for example, that it's pretty well known that there is advantages to going to Ivy League school because you can develop this network with people that are doing other interesting things that you can rely on and talk to and stuff like that. So learning is vital to developing that network. And that's what you want to do, is you want to have this particular interest that you think is interesting, and you continuously keep moving in that direction. Oftentimes, too, what's cool is because you are learning, your interests are going to change, and then your motivation is going to change to suit those interests, and then your network's going to change after that, right? So maybe you are interested in, so myself, I was interested in engineering, and then I got interested in business school, or, interested in business. I was always kind of interested in it, but it sort of changed and evolved over time, and now my network is completely different. I have my engineering friends, I have my business school friends, I have my professor friends, and all that kind of stuff that just kind of evolves as your interests change, and then my network is growing, and I can sort of call upon different people if I wanted to. I don't want to at this moment because I'm just happy sort of putting out these YouTube videos and sort of progressing on my own and seeing if people are interested in of itself. So that's it. If you like these videos, if you want to help out, so if you like these videos, if you like this one, do the old, otherwise you could do, the old, that kind of thing. If you're interested with the video, if you're interested in watching the other ones, you can watch them if you want. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel. I don't really mind either way. I just sort of putting these things out there as well. So if you're interested in this reciprocity thing that I'm doing, reciprocity.com, the E is spelled with a 3. It is a sharing economy proofreading platform where I have tried to incentivize people to, help other people out, and such that they can exchange proofreading services for free as long as you're on the service. But then when you want to, you get points, and as those points that your credits, those credits that you can, once you earn enough credits and you're good enough, you can take those credits out, and at that point, there's a system fee that gets taken out of that. And that's just to ensure that it continues to grow and I can maintain it and all that kind of stuff. But the cool thing is, what I want to do is actually use some of the profits from this to actually help my graduate students and do kind of things like, have scholarships and stuff like that, behavioral science. So, again, to recap with the video, what I was trying to say is to start out small. Small businesses start really small. They start with just somebody messing around with something. And then as you continue to mess around with something, your network's going to grow. And in order to keep growing your network, you got to keep learning. You got to keep trying different things and keep pursuing what you're doing. And the longer you keep with that, the larger your network's going to get and the more opportunities you're going to find. And as long as you're just keep investing and learning in what you're doing, it's going to grow. And that's how business actually starts. So that's all I wanted to say. And have a good day. Take care. And I'm going to see you on the next video. Bye.